And I still love the smell of that sandy soil. Some say it's dusty, some say it's gold, because it grows as sweet as fat lambs the market's ever sold. And I don't mind at all if you call me a Mallee boy. No, I don't mind at all if you call me a Mallee boy. Where you can lose an ear on duck opening day, where slickers bring their shotguns from miles away and shoot the life out of shags and swans that fly their way. Where a bloke grows as stocky as a Mallee bull, where they come from miles around to see the tractor pull, when the paddocks are clean and seed silos are full. And I don't mind at all if you call me a Mallee boy. Chapter 2. And I don't mind at all if you call me a Mallee boy. In the 1950s, the district population for Quambatook was about 1,000 people. It reduced slowly once they sealed the roads to both Kerrang and Swan Hill. But when I was a kid, it was quite self-contained, with a bank, a chemist, 3 cafes, 2 pubs, 2 garages, a bakery, stock and station agent, grocery store, and the Quambatook General Store. It had a menswear and a ladies' fashion shop, and right up to at least 1964, young lads could pick up their numbered jersey for the footy team at the menswear store. What a beautiful memory. Sport played an enormous role in giving my little town a feeling of togetherness. It still boasts 6 or 7 grass tennis courts, quite a number for a town of that size. For 5 shillings, I was a junior member and played often. However, if a senior member wanted the court, you had to move. I was always indignant about this rule and could see no reason why an adult was more important. I would have paid an adult membership fee if it made a difference. I guess it was always part of my nature to question things. Some of the adults probably thought I was an arrogant little bastard. In my day, there was a golf course which was mainly on a clay pan with gravel greens. There was a gun club, a small bore club. I didn't mind the small bore, and I have a silver serviette ring that was a prize from a gun club competition. But the main game in town was Aussie rules. We simply called it footy. We were completely unaware of any other code, and until I went to boarding school, I'd never heard of rugby. To a small boy like me, who enjoyed competitive team sport, footy was wonderful. In winter, every evening, till it got dark, I could always find a mate to kick the football with, someone who would stand at the other end of a little paddock. The best fun was when you could muster a group for each end. This is when we learned to compete in the air for the ball. When I came back from boarding school at Quamby, I enjoyed playing half-back flank. I found defending fairly easy. If I took 10 paces in front of my opponent, instead of niggling him side by side, I would generally win the ball. You see, in the country, the kicks fell short of the mark. It's curious that Quamby has gone through several changes in team colours. When my grandfather played, they wore Richmond colours, black with the yellow diagonal stripe. When Quambatook joined the Mid-Murray League, my dad and me later on wore the South Melbourne, now Sydney Swans colours, white with the red V. Now they wear the St Kilda colours because they changed leagues again. As a kid, the numbers on the local senior team's footy jerseys were legendary. We all knew who wore what number, so it was a huge thrill to be finally given the number 6 down at the local menswear. A red 6 to sew on my red and white jersey. Many good players had worn the same number 6 over the years. I wasn't what you would call a natural footballer, but I never gave up and managed to win a few best and fairest Polaco shirts. Then it all came to a sudden halt. I'd finally found my best position on the field, then we moved north to Moree, where there was no Aussie rules. So I joined the rugby team, because all the farm boys played rugby. But that's another story. Quambatook Group School had a 7th year tacked onto the normal primary school. They were very happy days for me. I always found the lessons easy and was always 3rd or 4th in class exams. Maybe because I didn't have a sister, I enjoyed being with the girls at school. By the time I was 6, I had a girlfriend named Judy McCann. She came to school by bus from a farm north of the town. In those days, love to me was just sitting next to her. I thought about her all the time. We both understood that we were boyfriend and girlfriend, but were always extremely shy about it. I drew a portrait of her in pastels, and on Parents' Day at school, both mothers were delighted with it. They saw no harm in our friendship, and after all, we were both Protestants. That mattered in those days. I prided myself in having the best-looking girls and most intelligent as partners in folk dancing. The dance involved a boy with a girl on each arm. I was always first in line. Perhaps the teacher realised I had a natural rhythm for dancing and would encourage the other boys. I became the drummer boy for assembly as well. You'd think I would have owned a horse when I was a kid. Perhaps if we'd actually lived on the farm instead of in town, I might have. The butcher's son used to ride a beautiful big black mare around town bareback. This inspired me to ask my parents for a horse, but my request was very quickly rejected. "What do you want a horse for? We don't need a horse," was Mum's reply. It was true. In the wheat farming district, horses were long gone. As a kid, Mum had to ride to school every day, and when Dad was in his teens, he had to feed, water and hook up a horse team for ploughing. I think his dad was the first to buy a tractor in the district. Dad saw the transition from horses to tractors that started his love of motor machines and mechanics. So I understood that they had no time for horses anymore. They were unnecessary, a waste of time, a nuisance and a headache. My young girlfriend, Judy, brought her pony in from the farm to give the town kids a ride at our school fete one year. Of course, I had to have a go. But as I'd had no experience at all, thanks Mum, I just slid off its bareback almost immediately. No one told me you had to hold on with your knees. What an embarrassing moment that was, and not one I got over easily. I'll never forget Judy having a chuckle. That same day, there was a contest for the most unusual pet as part of the fete. Well, I thought I'd win hands down. During a flood in the district, a little blue baby fox had been stranded. He was about 15 centimetres long. When they're babies, they are a deep smoky blue colour. I could carry the fox to school when it was young, despite all the dogs around. It was nervous, but quite comfortable in my arms. I got second prize in the unusual pet competition, losing to a kangaroo. What was so unusual about a kangaroo? Bloody idiots. I kept that fox until it was fully grown, but it never got used to being kept on a chain in the shed while I was at school, in the way a sheepdog does. I don't know how it didn't break its neck running full pelt all day until the chain snapped him back. Eventually the chain broke, and he cleaned up most of the neighbours' chooks. Uncle Arthur was commissioned to shoot the poor thing the next day. Dad couldn't do it. Nowadays I have no time for foxes. My cousins, Doug and Gerald, were roughly my age and lived across the paddock. Our dads were partners, so we spent a lot of time together on the land. My neighbour, Lawrence Pepperell, was great at making things. His dad was our woodwork teacher, and we loved listening to the Goon Show together. They came from the Dandenong Ranges near Melbourne and brought a refreshing new way of seeing things. I also had a couple of mates who enjoyed collecting birds' eggs. The rule was to take only one from the nest. Of course, sparrows, starlings and even native crows were treated with contempt. They were always attacking our orchard and veggies, and they're an introduced species. Lawrence and I had a bird's egg collection together that my mate Normie Free would inherit from me when we left Quamby. Neither of these boys had the gift of self-preservation and would climb further out on a tree limb than I would. Consequently, Normie broke his arm at least once. The normal way to climb down a tree with a bird's egg was to put it in your mouth. Lawrence and I found that by piling up a big heap of barley grass, you could drop the egg into it with great success, much better than breaking an egg in your mouth. So I was generally the expert egg catcher. Mr. Pepperell encouraged me to join the Gould League of Bird Lovers. I loved to draw birds and sent quite a few pictures to the Gould League. They would send back a certificate of merit. It was a fantastic way to make kids aware of the beauty around them. But you know, I think I'm the only one in my class who carried on with it. I often played a game with Lawrence and his brother Jeff, catching mice and filling up kerosene tins with them. This was easy. Mice in wheat country are part of life. Rarely would you lift up a sheet of tin or a wheat bag without revealing a nest of mice. dogs, kids, dads, all were mice killers. The huge temporary storage for bagged oats in Quamby was held up with long railway sleepers and corrugated iron. Each ripple against these railway sleepers usually had a mouse hiding them. Poke a stick through it and the mouse would land in the tin. With a writhing tinful, we could take them out in the middle of a clay pan, then let them go, one at a time. The first kid to stomp on the mouse got a point. This is a skill that I haven't lost. A mouse will never make it across the room with me around. Trouble is, I'm not fond of cleaning up the squashed dead body. The chook yard attracted mice, so I set up an old greasy beer bottle with butter on the end over a bucket of water and drowned hundreds of the things. Mum always had cats, which also served to keep snakes away. A snake bit Mum's sister when she was a kid, and she's still traumatised by the incident. Her dad cut the bites with a razor blade and sucked the poison away. I can imagine the horror in my mum's young eyes back then. I was brought up to kill any snake I saw too, usually with a shovel. Looking after the chook yard was my job, along with cutting the pine kindling for Mum's wood stove. I had bantams too. I absolutely loved their chicks. I miss not having a chook yard. Setting up their nests in 4-gallon drums was always such a wonderful experience, and their first egg was a triumph. In my teens in Quamby, I tried to be enterprising. I killed snails for my mum, a few bob a bucketful. I also delivered the Quambatook Times for 15 shillings. This included melting down the lead from the printing machine and folding the papers. I can still feel that awful burning sensation of rubbing my fist along the fold. Before the introduction of myxomatosis and now calicivirus, rabbits were a part of farming life. I wonder if the saying, "skin a bunny," is still used in the bush. My mum used to say it to us when she pulled off our singlets before bath time. Selling rabbit skins was another money-making idea, but I chose to do it during a rabbit plague and was offered only a halfpenny a skin. And I think that was only after Dad had a quiet word to the dealer for a favour to encourage my enterprise. My attitude towards native animals has changed completely since those days. Recently, I have carried whip snakes out of my shed on a long stick and thrown them back in the forest. Unfortunately, they came back because the native mice are delicious.